Hello, welcome back. This morning I talked about Swiss direct democracy and the Swiss system yesterday already, and I would like to continue today to immerse you a bit more into the Swiss political system. I was asked to talk a bit more on subsidiarity and how Swiss federalism is organized, and then the second part will be on currently used voting systems. So we have two topics for today. One is going a bit deeper into this highly federal, decentralized political structure of Switzerland, and then secondly to talk about voting systems, and in particular about experiments and pilots with internet voting in Switzerland. So just as a recap, we have these 26 provinces in Switzerland. They are like micro-states, and just over before starting here, discussed a bit with Theo the different federal systems we have in this world, and in Switzerland it's quite extreme. We also established yesterday that these 26 cantons can levy taxes, so they have their own income, they have their own parliaments, they have their own government. Switzerland is very diverse, so it's also this diversity is allowed in Switzerland. The tendency to have exactly the same standards is less pronounced than in other federal systems. And we have these, in addition, we have this very small scaled structure of municipalities, right? So formally, legally, we have these three layers. We have the national, the provincial, and the local layer. You have this in several other countries as well. However, in Switzerland, because they have their own budget, they can levy taxes. In particular, the cantons are like micro-states. If you read the Swiss constitution, and that's the point of view of the cantons in Switzerland, if you read the Swiss constitutions, the territory of Switzerland, there is no national territory. The Swiss constitution just lists all the names of the cantons. Switzerland is then the name of all the cantons. Right, so from the standpoint of the cantons, they actually, some a little bit jokingly say, Switzerland as such doesn't have a territory. It's just an agglomerate of these 26 cantons. And so this diversity in decentralized structure is upheld by the principle of subsidiarity, and subsidiarity means that whatever you can do at the lower level, you do it at the lower level, and only if you cannot implement and work on that, you move it on to the next higher level. So this is also this principle is quite upheld and important in Switzerland. It results in a very complex multi-level governance system, I would say. So here on this slide, I listed a bit the legal kind of the legal setup we have. So of course in all these legal texts in the constitution and in the cantonal constitutions is listed what the national level does. For example, nuclear energy is regulated on the national level. Coining of money, that's also quite traditional that this is done on the national level. But then you have cantonal policy domains such as health and the police and so forth. On the local level, water supply, waste disposal. But then it already starts. You have these policy domains that are highly integrated. So we could also speak of policy integration. If you want to implement these on a territory, you need several levels of government involved. So one typical example is the management and implementation of highways and roads. So there you have national and cantonal level involved. So they somehow need to talk to each other, right? So, and let's say the big problem is that nowadays, the problems we have to solve in Switzerland, or the problems as they occur, let's say, environment or very small. You could just say, yeah, okay, we could just adjust the borders of these cantons and merge cantons, or we could merge municipalities. This is occasionally discussed, and for municipalities it actually happens. You know, sometimes the very small municipalities, they look around, start talking about mergers with their neighbors, and this happens. However, on the cantonal level, if you want to change territories of cantons, you would need to change the constitution, and from yesterday we know that this would need a mandatory vote, so the cantons would need to vote in favor of changing their own territory, or they need to vote in favor of abandoning themselves. And this is very unlikely to happen. So this highly decentralized federal structure results in this complex multi-level governance system, and we have instruments we have to deal with that are the law. So we have financial transfer payments, or you have organizational means to deal with this. The result of this accepted very heterogeneous setup in Switzerland is that we have a multitude of transfer payments, and you have transfer payments going the vertical way. So since most of the policies must be implemented by the cantons have the territory, so a lot of national policies are implemented by the cantons, and they receive maybe a payment for that. So you provided a service, cantons would not work for free. So if they fix national highway roads, they would want a payment from the central level. So there's a multitude of vertical means from federal, cantonal to municipal level transfer payments. But there's also transfer payments that go horizontal, and horizontal transfer payments is, for example, an equalization payment scheme among all the cantons. Some of the cantons have a lot of mountains, as the canton we are in now. They need to maintain the whole infrastructure that come with a mountain. They have water dams, they have roads to maintain. So they have a lot of extra tasks, and that is paid as well. They maybe not have a population such as the larger Zurich or Geneva area that makes where the financial centers are. They have a much higher GDP. So there's equalization payments across among the cantons, right? To somehow deal with these huge differences. So you have these financial payments. Even in cantons, in the cantons themselves, they have this for their municipalities. So the richer, better off municipalities, they would, and the cantons also among them, they would pay into a fund, and then this money is redistributed. Of course, there's a huge debate on how to do that. Yes. Sorry for the ones who are new here. Please don't hesitate to answer questions or comment immediately. Just raise your hand and talk. It's not that I will have a monologue here, yes.
Are the cost and price levels among Swiss cantons nearly equal?
The cost for what?
For everything, for infrastructure, for food or so, is like, are the cantons, do they have tremendously different prices like some bigger countries, but Switzerland could be but if you do this kind of payments, then they would make more sense if it's nearly equal, just to picture
I got it, yes. Well, everything is expensive in Switzerland, that's first, of course. But, and I would say there's a slight tendency that in the periphery is a bit cheaper and the price level is a bit lower in the more peripheral cantons, but I think that the bandwidth is relatively narrow, so you could say within a certain margin you have it's comparable, yes, but they have to deal with if you're a mountain canton, you have largely different problems or largely different tasks than an urban canton, right? That goes almost without saying. Yeah, okay, so we have all these transfer payments. Then on the organizational level, and I'm listing these here because I got the question also because of what the goal is a bit, what can we learn from the Swiss political setup for any other decentralized structure that you want to build eventually. So to this acceptance of diversity in Switzerland, it comes with a price, right? So you need to constantly negotiate these transfer payments. These are heated debates. It is about money. It's about who pays how much into the fund, right? But also organizationally. So you need these levels, these 3 levels, and across all policy domains, we can say that, you know, policy making these days, it happens in inter-organizational networks in policy domains. So you have a health policy domain, you have maybe another for nuclear energy and so forth. So you have these policy domains, inter-organizational networks that also have to coordinate what they do, and you need to do this across the 3 levels. So you would have cantonal executives, cantonal ministers, so to speak, that meet to coordinate with the national level, especially in the policy making process. They are consulted, they have meetings, frequent meetings. So at the borders of this vertical and horizontal integration in Switzerland, there's a lot of fine-tuning and talking and communication going on, and it creates a lot of meetings among civil servants and also societal organizations that, for example, participate in extra-parliamentary committees. Yeah.
Do the cantons have the possibility to do quasi other federations with cantons that are not covered by the whole?
Yes, that's, I forgot to say, good question. So legally, they can form a treaty in a way. So they are free to do treaties among themselves. So if cantons in the same neighborhood, so frequently you have maybe the French-speaking cantons for, let's say, for collaboration in maybe e-government. You know, they speak the same language, maybe they have the same approach, or say we want to coordinate how we use e-government software. They can do a treaty as long as, there's a multitude of these intercantonal treaties. Some of them require a referendum again in the home canton. So the people maybe need to vote on whether a canton is allowed to enter such a treaty. There's one more option for having even more referendums. But most of these, I would say most of these intercantonal treaties are now quite well established. kind of they had, I would say, you know, we had since 1848, we had 150 years to establish these, and they're well established. But they create a lot of meetings and coordination that needs to be done. And you have to stay within the boundaries of national legislation. You cannot go, you cannot somehow go over the national level regulations, right? So you have to stay within your turf. Yeah.
And could these cantons make also treaties with, let's say, Austria or Germany or regions there? Or could the other cantons interfere into that?
This is a tricky question. This is called the small, we call it the small, literally translated, we call it the small foreign policy. Within certain borders, especially the border cantons are allowed to enter collaborative arrangements with their neighbors. However, foreign policy is by law a competence of the national level, so they would always need to inform the national level, the foreign ministry, and then formally maybe the foreign ministry concludes that treaty, or they have to be invited, they have to be on board. Again, this is typically a case where you cannot go around. In foreign policy, you cannot go around the national level. Yeah, you can see it here, these inter-cantonal treaties. What is also important are special purpose associations. Let's say for water systems, electricity, you have municipalities, again, that by a treaty, they form a special purpose association, sometimes also for schools. They say, we are too small, let's do this together. So let's say the big problem with all these is that they are sometimes not democratically legitimated. And of course, they have governing bodies as well. They take decisions that affect the public sphere. Sometimes they have to go back to their municipal population and again needs to go through a vote. But it's a bit of a gray area how this is all governed and regulated. So the big picture here is what I wanted to show. We have this highly decentralized structure. It's allowed, it's accepted, these differences, sometimes large differences in the Swiss federal system. However, it comes with a price. And the price is you need to sometimes financially equalize these differences. And the other price is coordination. You need to talk a lot. It's you need to coordinate what you do. Otherwise, this whole thing risks to fall apart. So it's a very fine-grained part of also, I would say, part of the political culture, this vertical and horizontal integration. So this was a bit the part on subsidiarity. I wanted to maybe just continue a bit from yesterday. So the big, let's say the big defining characteristics of the Swiss political system are direct democracy, this referendum democracy, and the highly decentralized federalism. There's a question here.
What's the state of subsidiarity of Switzerland and the EU?
What, Switzerland in the EU or
like these treaties that have been agreed on, or any, like what sort of power, if any, did Switzerland give to the EU, or soft power?
Yeah, for the moment, this is like any other international treaty we have with other countries. Of course, Europe, EU is much more important. So we have this plenty of bilateral treaties with the European Union, but this is considered by the European Union, and the longer this lasted, it was more and more considered as cherry picking, because you get access to the market, you get access to free movement of people, free movement of services, and so forth. but you're not willing to pay the full membership price, right? So, and this is currently the hot topic. They in long-lasting, several-year-lasting negotiations, we now have a new treaty with the European Union. However, we can't. It is a very thick document we read in the papers, but we are not allowed to read it yet. So we don't know what's in there. But the big, the big concern, I think, for most Swiss is, even though we know de facto already we depend a lot, trade and services depend a lot on the European Union, but formally we can still, with our referendum votes, and we're still independent, not a member, and Swiss people want to keep it that way. They would not like to have maybe Brussels or a European court deciding what we are allowed to do, right? So this is the big tension we have with Europe. Whether that can be upheld in the future, I don't know. Yeah.
Is Switzerland currently under treaties that are decided in front of European courtyards?
Yeah.
Not purely trade, but maybe security or maybe some infrastructure standards where Switzerland actually gets locked in.
Currently, I think Switzerland is kind of proactive. Also, when it comes down to infrastructure, power grids, and also train lines going through, transport going through Switzerland. So Switzerland did a lot for that, so that the transport through Switzerland on rail, for example, is possible. But I think there's no imminent threat by European Union that they have to comply with something. But the debate is more what will happen in the future. Can we still vote on all these topics that I explained a bit yesterday? Do we still have the full range of options? Can we still decide, even if it's a bit an illusion sometimes? So what will be the degree of autonomy of Switzerland after we have ratified maybe the next treaty with the European Union?
I would want to ask very specific about some legal fields. Would that go past the
Yeah, I'm not. The problem is I'm not the legal expert, so maybe we do this rather in private.
I think it's relevant.
Okay, try.
Is it very likely that in Switzerland we will see developments like in the European Union with the AI Act and with MiCA, that we basically will soon not be allowed to have anonymous wallets like these two?
I think currently no, but I don't know whether pressure. But currently we took another path. We kind of don't go down that way. Probably also because of already existing kind of organizations and industry blockchain foundations we have in Switzerland. So they more tend to, economically in general, Switzerland tends to regulate less strict than their European neighbors, I would say. Yeah. Okay, done with that part. So let's talk in the remaining time. Let's talk a bit about voting and voting systems. That's how you would normally vote, right? You go to a voting booth. There you have your anonymity. That's what let's say that's what most of you or most countries see or experience. This changed a bit with upcoming of the smartphone. You used to be in here, there used to be only you, right? Now you are there with your phone these days. And this is a Dutch member of parliament in 2014. He had the great idea to prove in the voting booth by taking a selfie that Yeah, me as a member of this political party, I also voted for this political party. You can see it here on the voting on the ballot sheet, right? So that's proof. I did the right thing. I'm a great party member. Of course, that raises all sorts of problems. So all of a sudden, this space is not anonymous anymore. This is not protected anymore. And by the way, these selfies then were labeled as stemfies. Stemmen means voting in Dutch, so these are stemfies. But it's not allowed anymore. But it just shows you that with this new technology, we have new problems when it's about voting. But also from yesterday, you remember at some point here, the general trend is to open up voting and Swiss direct democracy for more and more, historically speaking, of more and more people should be integrated. So it takes a long time sometimes, but the trend is there that more and more people can vote. And in 1992, highlighted here, the Swiss living abroad were allowed to vote as well. And that was one of the main driving forces to add yet another voting channel. So yesterday we talked a bit about the vote in the square or in the town hall meeting by raising your hand or historically even the sword, right? So we talked about that. And already we had the debate, but yeah, your neighbors can see how you voted, right? So vote secrecy, bye-bye. No vote secrecy in the town hall meeting or on this square, but accepted, part of the political culture, and also part of the tradition, so also allowed. Then, of course, you go to the ballot box, and ballot box voting typically happens in Switzerland on the weekends. So kind of you have to sacrifice your weekend. Didn't really match well anymore with modern lifestyles. So people want to do something else on the Sunday than going to the municipality or kind of some other public, usually also in schools, right? So some public building where you have these actually volunteers in Switzerland mostly, right? So these guys who supervise the elections and also count the votes are usually volunteers. And all the political parties are present, of course, but it's also considered to be a civic duty that at some point you can be summoned to go there and help with the voting, with the counting, of a vote. In the big cities, of course, counting is also quite a cumbersome, labor-intense activity. We have cities nowadays for counting that use optical scanners. There already discussion starts. You need to calibrate them well for optical scanners to work well, because optical scanners do not only count the vote, they also interpret a vote. They scan whether it's a yes or a no, whether it's for this or another party. So that's a bit more tricky. There's some more primitive technology being used. The banks use for counting bills, right? You can use these for counting vote sheets. And also precision balances. So you know how much one paper weighs, and it's a precision ballot, so you just take a bundle of paper and you weigh it on the precision balance, and you know how many yes votes are in there. That is also being used. So there's long-term, again, there's a trend to make this more, the whole voting experience, the whole logistics behind the voting, to make it more efficient and more convenient. So instead of opening up these voting facilities only on the Sunday, now it stretches throughout the preceding week. So there's several time slots when you can go and drop your vote before the actual voting Sunday. And also from yesterday, this is kind of all important, this pressure to make it more convenient, this pressure to make it more efficient, is maybe more pronounced in Switzerland because we do this every 3-4 weeks, right? Months, remember? So every 3-4 months we have this, these referendum votes on the national, cantonal, and local level. So, and already we have this tradition of voting by raising your hand. It's the complete opposite of other countries have with a voting booth where you are in private, anonymous. So extending the voting channel to postal voting was not such a big step. And that was the next big extension here. So postal voting was gradually introduced also to have more flexibility and also to allow for these foreigners, these Swiss living abroad, to being able to send in their vote via mail, right? So now the voting period extended to a 3 weeks period in which you receive the voting material. I showed it yesterday. You received this letter, and you have 3 weeks to make up your mind, fill in the yes and no's, and more than 90% these days hands in their vote by mail. In the big cities, even 95%, 96%. So postal voting is the norm. But what postal voting means is that you vote from a non-secure, non-controllable environment. It's again, it's the complete opposite of a voting booth where the organizers of the vote, the state, has full control that this is an anonymous vote. If you, in my family, we receive 4 of these envelopes, right, for my wife, 2 children. They're above, they are older than 18, so we receive 4 of these envelopes. So who prevents me of taking them, signing for them, and handing it in, right? Theoretically possible. My daughters might protest, but they might be on a trip or on holiday, and I can do it. But again, this is we have a consensus in Switzerland that this is acceptable. So we accept this, and we think there's not so much fraud. Occasionally there is fraud, and it usually then scandals got discussed in the news, but this is kind of the norm. So postal voting is the norm. Now, the age of the internet, just adding another voting channel, which is not under full control, where you can do it remotely from home in an uncontrolled environment, is internet voting. So the extension is not such a big deal in the logic of how the Swiss are voting. Yes, question here.
I have a question related to like social media and the impact it had like through the time. Because I know like there are some big countries where like social media created an impact and maybe like turned the polls or the voting system to one side or the other one. I don't know how that works in Switzerland.
I mean, theoretically, this could happen as well. We have social media, is open, and people are free to consult them. So they could be social media campaigns that are biased and try to spread fake news. So this is theoretically possible, but also from yesterday, the primary kind of means of information that is used, we know this from regular post-referendum surveys, is this information brochure. So newspaper, the traditional media, and this information brochure would always, if you advertise something completely different or fake in social media, you could always compare with the information brochure. And in the information brochure, let's say it's not only the opinion of the politicians or the state. The the citizens, the ones who initiated a citizens' initiative or a vote, they also have their space. So I think it's a bit more resilient in the Swiss case, but would still apply in a way, but it's a bit more resilient. So yeah, we have trials. We started trials with internet voting. We started discussing internet voting in the year 2000. There was a bit of a race internationally, who can do it first. And Switzerland was also among the ones that tried to compete in this kind of race, being modern, being progressive, and using the full full tools we have from using all we have from technology. So again, typical Swiss approach. The first actually internet vote in one municipality in the canton of Geneva took place in 2003. But then also typical Swiss approach, again, decentralized, leave it to the cantons. Organizing votes and elections is a cantonal matter. And of course, we cannot have a centralized, so this already excludes having a centralized solution such as Estonia. And of course, it cannot be the same system in like the cantons that maybe volunteer to try out online voting. So we had this trial phase with 3 systems. So you can see them here on the slide, the red Geneva, green Neuchâtel, blue Zurich. 3 different, very different internet voting systems. Again here, decentralized, trial and error. So let's see which system is better, which one survives. I don't go into detail of these 3 systems. There's a very good website of the Federal Chancellery. If you just type, maybe a bit misleadingly, they call it e-voting in Switzerland, although it's internet or online voting. So type e-voting Switzerland, and you will see a very good page explaining all of this, also in English, of the Federal Chancellery. So it's an admin.ch page, sub-page. So what happened? So the idea was that other cantons could join the already existing 3 systems, the one they liked best. And we can see here that a couple of cantons joined the red system. A couple of cantons, more of them, joined the blue system in Zurich. And the green system, nobody wanted to join. The green system in Neuchâtel, they did a smart thing. Actually, they integrated the internet voting solution into their e-government portal. So that was a smart move, actually. So you don't have a standalone internet voting application. It's integrated into the e-government service. In the e-government service, you can order your new license plates, you can pay your taxes and so forth. That's, you know this from other countries as well. But what happened in 2016 here, all of a sudden the blue system disappeared, right? What happened? They did a security audit, and the blue system didn't pass the security audit, right? So this tells us that in this trial and error phase, one system didn't survive. It also tells us that the control mechanisms for a critical infrastructure such as online voting somehow worked, right? So the audit, result of the audit was that this system does not conform to the rules, is not safe enough, so they had to take it off the shelf. But it also meant that 8 cantons then all of a sudden didn't have an online voting system anymore. Then for the red system, something else happened. They would have had to upgrade the system to have universal verification, and they didn't manage to do that. So they also had to take it off the shelf. They didn't have the money to develop this further. So the red system also dropped out. Then only the green system was left. And then the Swiss Post actually took over the green system and is now managing it. So again, if you want to see more, I'm not the cryptographer and specialist of the e-voting system, so, but if you want to read up on this, is also on GitHub. The current e-voting, internet voting system by the Swiss Post, you can find it very well documented on the Swiss Post website. So Swiss Post e-voting, you will also find all the details and links to GitHub. They do it very cleverly, it's good organized, they do bug bounty programs and so forth. So I think it's, and these trials are still ongoing, right? So we started in 2003, now we're here, 2025, we're still in pilot and trial phase, but maybe from yesterday's talk, that doesn't surprise you so much because in this is kind of the Swiss way, like do it slow, try it out, see what works from bottom up, and then if it works, it's maybe adopted by more cantons. By the way, the full generalization of postal voting, so postal voting as well, it started with one canton, and then it mushroomed and traveled to all the other cantons. And that process from the first canton starting with postal voting until all had it, it took 30 years. Right? This is accepted in Switzerland. You would say in other countries, you would get kind of nervous. We should do this much quicker. But in this setup, again, with these mini states, it doesn't work that way. In Switzerland, all of these things are slow. And there are people who hate this, and there are people who say, slow is good. You know, we can learn, it takes time to learn, we can avoid mistakes others do. We did surveys also, asking people what they think about internet voting. It's a legitimate question. Do people actually want this? But some interesting patterns here. So we did a national survey and asked them whether do you want the full generalization of internet voting? And it's all in the green, so it's all above 50%, but we see some areas are a bit darker green, also where we are here now. And it's interesting to see that either urban centers like around Zurich and Geneva, or in the periphery and the mountain areas. These are the areas that have the highest support for internet voting. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you think, is there any reason why they want like to be more like technological versus not that much?
In the urban area?
Yes, like you see like light green versus like the dark green.
Yeah.
What are the patterns then?
Yeah, I mean, in the urban areas, you have maybe more tech-savvy people who are more modern thinking, and I think in the rural, peripheral areas, it's more about convenience, easier access. You know, in some areas, even finding the next post box is maybe, yeah, you need to go by car or something like that. So somehow, that's my ad hoc explanation for this pattern. Then we also monitored the use during all these trials. So these are all these dots are because we have the frequent referendum votes, right? We were able to collect a lot of experience with online voting. So a lot of instances. I would say Switzerland, internationally speaking, has the highest or most practice for internet voting because of the frequent referendum votes. Maybe Canada, some provinces and some cities, Markham, etc., they have the highest number of participants because there are a lot of inhabitants, and the most steady generalized use of internet voting, internationally speaking, certainly Estonia. But Estonia, also the user numbers, if you look at it historically, they started with 2-3%. And these here are user numbers, right? So it's not turnout or anything like that. It's percentage of internet voting channel users, but they could also have used postal voting, or they could have gone to the ballot box, but they chose internet voting. Of course, here with the expats, the Swiss living abroad, it's relatively high. Because if you don't live in the neighboring countries, these 3 weeks to send in your ballot is kind of not enough. So a lot of Swiss abroad complain that the vote doesn't arrive on time. So it's a big convenience factor for Swiss living abroad to use internet voting. And you can see there's a steady uptrend during all this trial phase. Starting at, by the way, I forgot to say, Estonia started with 2-3%. Now they're around 55%. But I interpret this in a way that you need to build up trust also in this new internet voting channel. Obviously, it's kind of balancing convenience with security issues, but this took them more than 20 years as well in Estonia, going from 2-3% to 55%. And here also gradually is going up. People get used to the channel, the new channel, and having trust in this. The Swiss residents in these 3 pilot cantons, the picture looks a bit different, right? So how to interpret that? Question.
Do all the expatriates together, do they form a group that also do some shared decision making and anything, or are they just individuals that count to the single municipalities?
They're not a group as such. So if you are a Swiss living abroad, you go to the consulate and you have to actively say, I want to be in the vote registry. But then you're in the vote registry of your home canton or home municipality, right? So it's not a vote. In some countries, you're right, it's a voting district per se, but this is not the case in Switzerland. So you're still attached to your municipality or canton. But here with the Swiss residents, the pattern looks a bit different. What we can observe here in this data is very interesting because what we can see is a novelty effect. So at the beginning, very high use of internet voting, and then just testing it once, and then it drops. We have these drops from initially high internet using rates, and whenever it spikes, they added additional municipalities which had the novelty effect again. What we also see is whenever there's an interruption, and in the Geneva system they had an interruption because of technical and legal and political problems, so they needed to fix this. So a couple of years, no internet voting, then you reintroduce the channel, and people kind of lose a bit of trust and interest. So you start from scratch in a way. The smarter approach is the green one, integrating it into the e-government system with kind of steady but slow growth from a low level. So this was the first big trial phase. Now, after again fixing security loopholes and software problems, we are in the second big trial phase. So still nothing is generalized, only a couple of cantons who are willing to test the new system and channel are in some municipalities and some cantons for the Swiss abroad. Again, we are still in the testing phase. So that's where we stand. Also, we asked, and this was kind of surprising, or not so surprising, I said it's kind of a balance between convenience and security issues. All our studies which we published confirm that, but here you can see it with one variable here, trust in the voting channel on a scale from 0 to 10. Highest trust for the ballot box, but nobody goes there anymore because 95% do postal voting. A little lower for mail, still higher than 5, higher than the middle, but internet voting clearly lower. And actually, yeah, younger people are not the highest users of internet voting. I think they understand much better this trade-off between trust, security, and convenience. The heavy internet voting users are male above 40 years old. But I'm already over time, and I think this is what I wanted to talk about, if I'm not mistaken, for today. And I'll
We can go for maybe another 5 minutes.
Yeah,
if
I mean, maybe if there's questions on this, we can take a couple of questions, do a bit of Q&A.
Has there been any incident regarding privacy or leaks that would grant such a low trust in internet voting?
I just couldn't hear it for... some
sorry.
noise in the back. Can you repeat, please?
Has there been any incident regarding privacy or data leaks that would grant such low trust in internet voting?
Yeah, data leaks not, but they were security issues. I mean, in one of the, also they were like groups like the Chaos Computer Club and other people who monitored this very closely, and they always highlighted where the kind of security loopholes could be. And these code audits and bug bounty programs, there was always a little bit of something. And there was, I mean, at some point there was so much they had to take the blue system out because it didn't pass the security audit. So they just took it out before a huge incident happened, in a way. And they had, after this whole phase here, 2017-18, until 2 years ago, again, there was a long break, and they had to fix the system of the Swiss Post, and they had to upgrade it from individual verification to universal verification. So now we are, and also there's new national regulation that the source code must be published and so forth. So it became much stricter, and for a canton to operate this voting channel is quite a challenge, but it's done by the Swiss Post. So why the Swiss Post invests in this? Because it's kind of technology transfer. They learn how to securely transfer information from A to B, and that's what a postal service does.
You mentioned something really important right now. And that is that the CCC, the Chaos Computer Club, other hacker clubs, audited that. Back then, the Bush administration, George Bush II, introduced that. They had problems with their systems, but these are centralized systems. These are not Web3 systems. And it sounded like the risk assessment in the trust of the population does foot on these inputs. My question would be now, because I'm convinced that the CCC and other players like Ethereum Foundation that are highly respected among tech sphere would audit a Web3 system very differently, and that could totally happen also from side of the CCC and these respected forces. Do you think that would switch the trust? Is the influence of the risk assessment of these NGOs and activist groups big, or is it more like traditional suspicion and it wouldn't really help?
Yeah, that's also a very tough question. How would people evaluate these systems? And it's somehow, I think it ranges from blind trust and naive trust to like maybe whatever you try to do, it can never be good enough, and foreign secret services can see it and use the data. So I think you have the whole range, and it has to be accepted by the population, this new voting channel. If there's too much mistrust, and you can always come up, you have an election or referendum result, you can always say it's rigged. So then the recount is a big problem, but now we have universal verification, so maybe that helps. But then people would not, you cannot convince all of them, so they would then not trust the universal verification. However, maybe you can build your third-party devices that would, and you can do that independently and control the data or monitor, audit the data that is on a public bulletin board, and you can run your crypto proofs and have a very good, and then Chaos Computer Club could also probably do that. They have the capability of doing that and helping to verify the vote. But whether that is enough in the public debate then is difficult to predict. Yeah.
There are two more questions.
And then we should end.
Sorry, I lost a bit track on the discussion in Switzerland, but could you maybe quickly elaborate on the connection between e-voting and e-ID? Or what is there exactly? How are they interrelated?
I think that, I don't know in detail how this would then work technically, but currently we don't have an accepted EID, and you have to kind of the identification at the beginning of the procedure is all with you receive vote codes and logins on a secure platform. Everything is encrypted with you. You receive this login information on the ballot. On this voting card you receive. So you would just have a voting card with a bit more information, login and return codes. That's how it works now without EID. But the hope is that once we have an EID, a proper one, it would be more seamless, right? So because now with the code voting and verifying all these codes, it's the procedure is much heavier and not so seamless. Some people even say the postal vote is more convenient than the internet vote, right? Because you have to go through the whole login procedure. There was one more question here. Oh, sorry.
A question about the graphics. Geneva have some time that have no data. That's why they.
The interruption.
Yeah, and not interruption. Why they interrupt the process of the voting?
Because they had to upgrade the system. There was also doubts about the security of the system. They had to. They forgot to also fix some. They had to build the legal basis. And not surprisingly, they needed to prepare this whole thing they had to update the election law, and it had to pass a referendum vote. All this takes time, makes this interruption relatively long, right? Yeah. Okay, we come to an end. Thank you for listening, and we have the next. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.